to change the setting. Not good. Not able to change the setting. Not good. Not able to change the setting. Not good. That's bad. So I'm not able to. Oh no. There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good following morning. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is AMA number 94, October 13th, 2022. Rabbi Avi Baumel is my co-host, and we have a very, very special edition today, a book launch.
And also it is Sukkot. You forgot to mention that part. Moadim l'simcha, everyone. Very exciting. We have the fourth day of Sukkot upon us.
Did I forget to mention Sukkot, or was I just leaving some room for my co-host to do his thing?
You can see it one way or the other way. I am in the holy city of Caesarea and sat in my sukkah, celebrated like the rest of my country. Wonderful, wonderful Sukkot celebrations. How is it in Krakow?
Like the rest of the Jewish members of your country, the Christian and Muslim Israeli citizens probably did not sit in the sukkah.
That is correct. That is
so
correct.
Today, things are good in Krakow. Very exciting today. After we go over some issues, we will talk with Tamar Jacoby about her book. It's our first book launch, Displaced, the Ukrainian Refugee Experience. Coincidentally, our first book launch is a book that very much has to do with JCC Krakow. Go figure. So we'll talk to our good friend Tamar,
Very exciting.
an NGO executive, journalist, and very important part of her resume, previous guest of the AMA.
Looking forward. She's a great person to talk to. She's got a lot of life experience.
Avi, how's the weather in Caesarea?
Oh my, it is glorious.
Is it beautiful?
You know that they say that it's a big curse if it rains during Sukkot. It means God's like throwing splashing water on your face. So far we're good. Nice weather. And
is it safe to say that you've been, as an Orthodox Jew and rabbi, you've been following the commandment and of doing as much as you can in the sukkah, including sleeping in the sukkah?
It is unsafe to say that. Luckily, the Remu has helped me out. 500 years ago, the Remu gave me a way out, and I'm sticking to it.
What's that way out? Cowardice?
He said that without getting too into details, but a man who's married sleeps with his wife, and it's not appropriate to do so in the sukkah, and therefore he is exempt from sleeping in the sukkah. Otherwise, you would absolutely catch me in the sukkah.
So my understanding is because Sukkot is 7 days in Israel, that a couple of the days you're not sleeping in the sukkah, but surely 4, 5, 6 of those days you are in the sukkah.
Well, I guess that would depend on each married couple.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're in the Holy Land. I'm guessing you've built a beautiful sukkah, as you've mentioned. Yet you're not sleeping in the sukkah, Avi. Strange.
There is another halacha, in addition to the Remu. It says the person who's mitzta'er is patur from the sukkah. If people are uncomfortable, then just like if you were uncomfortable in one room in a house, you wouldn't stay in that room. You'd go to a more comfortable one. So I'm uncomfortable with the idea of sleeping in the sukkah. I have never done it in my life. I will say my sin. I confess to you, Jonathan, but I will continue to eat in the sukkah and enjoy company in the sukkah. But sleeping is just.
So I'll give you two scenarios. Yom Kippur, sweaty shtibel with possibly unvaccinated, unmasked people who haven't brushed their teeth in 24 hours. How many of those 24 hours do you spend in synagogue?
I'd say I spend 18 of those in the synagogue. And there were
Caesarea,
1,000 sweaty people where I celebrated Yom Kippur.
Caesarea, beautiful, beautiful sukkah under the stars, can be alone, you, the stars, the beautiful world that Hashem has created, and you don't stay in the sukkah. Very interesting.
You know, it says in the Torah, Basukot Teshvu Shivat Yamim. Now, does it say that you should sleep in the Torah? It said the rabbis interpreted that you should also sleep in the sukkah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying there's a little opening there for me.
I see.
You know.
So, by your logic, Avi, I don't feel like it says in the Torah, thou shalt not have a bacon cheeseburger. It says something about seething thy kid in the mother's milk, which seems to be.
It says do not eat pig if you know your legal codes. So bacon cheeseburger was probably not a good.
I will take off the bacon and have my cheeseburger because the Torah does not seem to expressly command me not to, in the same way that tells me I don't have to sleep in the sukkah. But all right. I digress. Anyway, Sukkot was beautiful here. We built a very beautiful sukkah. Unlike Israel, where we would probably survive, we would not make it if we slept in the sukkah. So we did not sleep in our sukkah.
I was with you that first night, Sukkot. It was wonderful. We had a huge group. Were there 80, 85 members of the Jewish community that were with us?
Yes.
Some were Ukrainian, some were Polish. It was, my wife was with me, Hadley. It was so nice that we were able to celebrate together, and wonderful food. And yeah, it was great. So very much enjoyed that. And the rest of Sukkot, it was not so easy. We didn't have a sukkah close by. I had to go to the JCC to eat, but okay, you know, make sacrifices.
When you say close by, you mean you had to go the 90-second walk to the JCC?
Well, the elevator in my building was broken, so that's 4 flights down and 4 flights up with your food. I chose to eat less, let's just say.
All right.
That's allowed too. There's no mitzvah other than the first day. There's no mitzvah to eat in the sukkah. There's just a prohibition that if you're going to eat a meal and you eat it outside of the sukkah, that's a no-no. So if you choose to eat very little, so then you don't have to eat in the sukkah. But the first day of Sukkot, you have to eat in the sukkah.
Why don't people build a bathroom into their sukkah so they can be even more in the sukkah?
I don't know.
I feel like isn't there an idea that you should spend as much time as possible? I'm not saying what you personally do. I'm saying there's an idea that you should spend as much time as possible in the sukkah.
I think the idea is to have a certain measure of normality, balance, and not be crazy, but at the same time to try to adhere to mitzvot.
Wow, that's interesting.
So it doesn't, you know, people who live in a home don't stay in the home 24/7. So the same thing with the sukkah. You're.
So it's not as if like people like it's. I feel like it's all about moderation. Nobody would like swing a chicken above their head or anything crazy.
It's all about moderation, okay? And
Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. Avi, can that be what your next book is about? Orthodox Judaism. It's all about moderation.
I agree wholeheartedly. My version of Orthodox Judaism is moderation. Absolutely. Your version of your type of Judaism is moderation. And Rolat's version of his type of Judaism is moderation. And Tamar's version, everyone's right in the middle of where they're supposed to be. And anyone to the right of them is a crazy fanatic. And anyone to the left of them is barely doing anything. So
the difference is that if you would ask the other people who aren't you, do you feel that according to whatever your understanding of God's will, you're pretty much living according to it? The rest of us would be like, no.
Speak for yourself.
All right.
I think that you know, average people who go to the synagogue when they go and feel like they should go, then they're doing what they should be doing. No one's saying, you know, I'm the worst Jew in the world. They focus on other aspects of Judaism. They might say I'm not so religious, but they make up for it in other areas, which Judaism provides.
Like Tikkun Olam?
I would call it Ben Adam L'Chavero. You like the phrase Tikkun Olam? Go ride with that. That's fine. Ben Adam L'Chavero involves more than just trying to help out, the rainforest, but also trying to be nice to the person next to you, whoever that person is.
The Jew next to you.
I didn't say that.
I know.
Aviv Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem. We're all in God's image, Jew and non-Jew alike.
It's interesting that the phrase that everybody talks about, he who saves the whole life saves the world. Isn't it he who saves the life of a Jew saves the whole world?
You could be right in that midrashic statement.
It could be. Avi, I have some interesting travel coming up.
Tell me about it.
Well, so a friend of ours is the owner of the basketball team in Paris, and they are playing a game on Sunday for the first time ever. There'll be a basketball game played at Roland Garros, where the French Open is held. And I'm going to go on Sunday to Paris and go to that basketball game and then come back to Krakow on Monday.
That is interesting.
Pretty cool, right?
If I was in Krakow, I would probably have to go to chaperone you in order just to make sure that you get there safely.
If you were in Krakow, you would be more than invited to come with me.
Oh, I want to tell you that I watched a wonderful documentary with Hadley. Even she enjoyed it. I think it's called The Redeem Team. And
I watched it.
Fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Well done. Insight into the personalities. They have to shift gears a little bit, not be a star, all those type of things.
Redeem Team about the 2012 Olympic team, 2008, I guess. 2012, because 2008 was Athens when they lost. And the U.S. basketball team trying to redeem itself after losing in the semifinals to Argentina in the Olympics. The first time that they lost since 1972, when the game was stolen from them by the Soviets. So yeah, I watched it. It was very good. So the Paris basketball, or the French basketball league, is very much in the news these days, because there's who's considered the best basketball prospect ever to come into the NBA, ever.
Wembanyama.
Victor Wembanyama, 7'4", 5 even, plays like a guard, unbelievable defense. This guy is the real deal. And he plays for, I think, Limoges, for some team in France. So yeah, it's a big
Wait, you're going to be at that game where he's going to be playing?
No, but he's going to play Paris in December, so maybe I have to sneak back over there to see him. See him before he goes pro is something. This is like seeing it's like seeing Jordan in high school.
Yeah, they're talking about him like he's the Messiah. They've never seen this animal.
Never Zion.
This type of player.
Everything, right? Like a great guard that happens to be a foot taller than he should be. Amazing.
And he's humble. I heard him in an interview. They say, "What do you think about all this?" He said, "I haven't done anything yet, so I can't tell you. Give me some time and let me enter the league." So, good answer.
Really amazing. And then that's Monday, and then Wednesday I go to the U.S. for 3 weeks.
Whoa.
So busy time. I will be in New York, Philadelphia, St. Louis, where I've never been before, and possibly Florida. Hopefully Florida.
I thought you were going to be in Vegas.
That's January, Avi.
Yeah.
January is looking like a tough month. Some travel lined up for that. I don't want to say exactly where, but some, let's say, places a little bit. My goal in life is, rebuild Jewish life in Krakow, help do all the work stuff. But I generally have a policy that if I get on a plane, I want to upgrade temperature-wise. Right? I don't like to go someplace with worse weather. Luckily, living in Poland, that's quite an opportunity to do, because I'm generally not upgrading, which is why I generally don't like to go north or east of here. So yeah, January will be some more travel. But anyway, let's bring on Tamar, our guest and friend, Tamar Jacoby. Tamar Jacoby, she's the president of Opportunity America, a Washington-based nonprofit where she works to promote economic mobility. She is the founder. She founded another nonprofit called Immigration Works USA. She journalist and author. She's written a bunch of books. She's the New York Times op-ed page deputy editor. She's published in the Wall Street Journal, the Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, all over the place. And recently has spent the better part of the last 7 months of her time in Poland, mostly Krakow and also Ukraine. And one of the fruits of her labor, besides doing some interesting articles and meeting a lot of people and doing a lot of good, was this.
Woo!
Double fisted.
Double fisted. I went on Amazon, as everyone should be scurrying to do. I went on Amazon and bought Displaced, the Ukrainian Refugee Experience. Interviews with 45 refugees at JCC Krakow by Tamar Jacoby. Welcome, Tamar.
Hello, Jonathan, and hello, Ami. How nice to be here.
Mazel tov, Tamar.
Thank you, Ami. That's very kind of you.
Very
Tamar,
exciting.
you are our second two-time guest ever.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What an honor.
That's right. It's a very elite crew. How are you? And where are you?
I'm down the street from you. I'm on Gazova 7, Krakow, Kazimierz.
Wait, you're back?
I'm back.
Did you just get back?
Yes.
Okay.
This morning.
This morning. Oh, okay.
Where were you?
I had to go home. You had to go home. I had to go to DC for a few days.
Wow.
I don't know where home is anymore.
I had no idea that you were back. Well, good to see you.
Yeah, same here. And start with thanks. Thanks to the JCC for giving me this opportunity to not just be on the show, but to meet the refugees and try to help and write this book.
Meet the Refugees. So tomorrow, let's talk about this book in case anybody's missed it. Look at this beautiful, first of all, beautiful cover. Very, I love the design. Everybody, when Tamar came to me with the design that a graphic artist had done, everybody thought I'm so critical, whatever. I was like, I love it, perfect. Not a word. I had not a word to say. Please go on Amazon where you can buy this. All the proceeds will go to help support the effort that we're working on, that Tamar has been helping us with of helping Ukraine. So let's talk a little bit about the genesis of this book that's available on Amazon.
Jonathan, you're the best. Thank you. Well, I mean, some of your listeners
it didn't start out as an idea of a book. We came out, we talked a little bit of this last time, but we can talk about it again. There was an idea that you wanted to come here and help, and that very quickly became, based on your expertise and your history, who you are and what you do, that you wanted to meet refugees and talk to them.
Well, you were very kind. You encouraged me to come to Poland. When I was looking for places to volunteer, a lot of other people said to me, you're not a doctor and you don't speak Ukrainian, you'll just get in the way. And you very kindly said, we'll figure out something for you to do, come on. So I got on a plane the next day. And when I got here, I had a first meeting with your team and we sort of said, how can I help? And I was prepared to unpack boxes and ladle soup and whatever it took. But we had a conversation and, I said, do you interview these refugees? Do you either help them think about their stories or find out their needs? Maybe you're offering food when really what they need are diapers or vice versa. Do you talk to them? And your team said, well, we have an intake form and we have some consult, coaches kind of helpers, but we don't really have enough time. We serve 1,000 people a day. So I embarked on a project where I interviewed 45 of them. And again, it was your good idea. I mean, you get a lot of credit here. It was your good idea to make them into a book, to make the sketches into a book. And so it's all through the month of April, I interviewed people and, they were every kind of people you can think of. They were Jews and non-Jews, certainly majority non-Jews. They were, all ages, all walks of life, from cleaners and HVAC technicians to university professors and engineers, and they were from all over the country.
Let's talk a little bit about the process, because I'm interested in interviewing. I find it it's something that you never think too much about until you actually have to interview other people, and then you're like, wait, there's a whole skill to this, and the way a conversation can flow, and what information, and do you have to have a destination in mind, or you just So that's really my question for you, because, if you didn't say, okay, I'm going to write a book, so I'm going to have some theme running through this, you just wanted to get to know the stories of some refugees. So
Yeah,
you
I
were-
was really interested in the wartime experience, honestly. I mean, I was asking them about their needs in Krakow, and that was, useful, I hope, to the JCC. But
Right.
I really wanted to know, what was it like experiencing the war? And I think that's what turned out to be most useful to them. I mean, I'll talk to my process in a second, but in the beginning, I used to say to myself, like, am I helping anyone? Like, I'm listening, I'm asking them questions about their story. Maybe I'm making it worse. Maybe I'm kind of, bringing them back to the trauma. But people really seemed to welcome the chance to tell their story. They were fresh out of the chaos. They were trying to process it. And, psychologists say, just like putting it in chronological order helps you kind of take the chaos, and do something with it. So I did come around to thinking, maybe, I mean, I'm not a therapist, and I certainly wasn't anything I did, but maybe just by being a blank slate and listening, I'm hoping that I was helpful in some way, because they did seem to want to talk. But, the way I do interviews, and this applies in any project, I do a lot of interviewing in my, normal research life. I have four or five things I want to cover, and I kind of move through them, but I have a lot of room for people to take me in another direction. So, if I sort of say the first question is, where were you when the war started? Everybody has a story about that. But, then they'll tell me whether the thing they care about most is that their grandmother was in a city where the war was much worse, or that, the most important thing they were thinking about was getting their cat out. They'll take me where they need me to go. And then sometime over the course of the time, I'll come back to my kind of big buckets. But, the big buckets were, what was your experience? What made you decide to leave was really the first question, because that varied a lot. And some people didn't decide to leave, right? So why did the ones who left leave? Then, what was your experience of getting out, really, traveling through the country and getting to the border? And then what was your experience of getting to Krakow, and, why'd you pick Krakow, and who, if anyone, helped you here? And then, the big million-dollar question is, what's next for you? Because, the more I kind of experienced this was, it's the big challenge is this just a little trip to the West and I'm going to go back soon? Or is this the first day of the rest of my life? And people don't know that. That's the hardest thing about it. It could be, how do you think about your life in those circumstances?
I think what's interesting on a certain level is that, this war, there have been many ups and downs, let's say, in the seven and a half, almost 8 months that this has been going on. And the early days, I think that you interviewed people, April, for the most part, was really the most intense part of the war. It's for us in Krakow. Now, if your city or your town is being bombed, then that defines it for you. But for us here in Krakow, which is obviously just a small part of the war or a small part of the whole picture, I think that was the high point of how many refugees were here. But it wasn't the initial point of just chaos, that we didn't know what was going on. We thought the whole country was going to collapse. It had some kind of stability had set in, that we had some idea of what things were going on, yet there was 150,000 Ukrainians in Krakow, a city of 750,000. So, if you would have asked people earlier, I think they would have been just in shock. And if you would ask people now, people in Krakow have been here usually for months. I mean, we'll see what's going to happen now with this latest bombing, that we're starting to get more people coming in. But it's been a while since people were really at that level. And I feel like after the interviews, things have kind of slowed down then. So that was really almost the apex of refugee Krakow, is when you were interviewing these people.
I think that's exactly right. And I think for these people, they had been out, some of them had literally arrived here a few days before I met them. At the most, they had arrived 2 weeks before I met them. And again, they were still in such shock and, really didn't know how the war was going to stabilize. I mean, one of my most, the people who I thought was the most poignant was a HVAC technician from Busha. And, in April, Busha was an occupied city. He had no idea what was going to happen. He's now gone back, but he at that point it was the world was in chaos, and so I think you're right. I think it was at a certain apex of intensity. If you're from the East, you're continuing to have apexes of intensity. But
what
Tamar,
about? Go ahead, Avi.
In terms of process, you obviously needed a translator. How did that work out for you? I mean, there was always a delay, and were they able to kind of work through the translator?
Yeah, I had a very gifted translator for most of the interviews. I mean, I learned early on that it makes a big difference. But I had a very gifted translator, and we had a lot of questions in the beginning because she's actually Russian, like not like Ukrainian who speaks Russian, but like Russian. And so we were worried at the beginning maybe people wouldn't want to talk to her. But there's something about the chemistry. I don't claim any special chemistry, but she had good chemistry. I think for whatever reason, I was sort of, seemed receptive enough that people wanted to talk to me. There was something about the chemistry that worked. And you do spend a lot of time waiting there while they're talking, and then you hear, but she was very good. And I think it worked well, because again, since I've been here these 8 months, I've done quite a few projects and had a lot of different translators, and you definitely learn some are better than others. And
Were all of your interviews in person?
yes. Oh yes. Well, we did one on a Zoom because the woman was.
I think that when we'll start to look back at translation and think that in a world where we're talking over one another, and if you watch TV in certain countries, you can put something, I don't know, when I'm in Israel in a hotel, I'll turn the TV on and I'm shocked by how the people just continually talk over each other. I mean, in America a little bit, but there it's just, this idea that everything is immediate and we're doing all these things. Translation, the act of doing things with translation forces you to be a little more introspective, and it allows you to frame your thoughts in a way that you probably wouldn't do because it would seem awkward. And especially if you're, as the three of us sort of are, fast talking New Yorkers, you really don't compose your thoughts in a way. You just kind of blurt everything out. And I find me and Avi, who have spent a lot of time in a world of dealing with translation, being here in Poland and sometimes making an official speech, and you wait and you have the 15 seconds to kind of say, everything comes out as poetry almost, because you actually have this time to craft these beautiful sentences.
Well, the other thing was striking to me was I watched the people's faces. So, when you're talking and when you're engaged, you don't really have time to just kind of sit back and look at the affect. I mean, you do, but you don't, not quite as consciously.
You can focus.
And here I could just focus on the affect. They'd be talking, and I'd be trying to I of course would be trying to figure out what were they talking about and what were they saying, but doing it more from their faces and their body language and their and whatever.
Were you recording everything?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Then you reviewed afterwards everything that was.
Yeah. I take notes. I'm a belt and suspenders journalist. I take notes and I record, and then you
Tamar, tell me something, because the result here is 45 interviews. Now, does that mean, how many people did you go up to? How many people said no? How many interviews did you do? And then you did the whole interview and you're like, oh, that doesn't make the cut. How many people did you speak to? And you're just like, not so,
Yeah, we didn't, but everybody, I didn't throw, nothing went to the cutting room floor. Some people said no. Some people said no, but not too many.
A lot of people? Most people.
Well, so there were different kinds of things. So in the first few days, when I didn't really know what I was doing, I was just going up to people in the distribution center, your distribution center. And some of those people were in a hurry and they didn't want to talk. And, I was catching them while they were getting their groceries. Who wants to have an interview in the middle of the...
might not have been there when you finished and they were trying to they'd waited in line. So
yeah. So some of those people said no. But then as we went on through the process, most of the people we spoke to were people that you were housing. And the people that you were housing, we made appointments with. The people we spoke to for the book, Displaced, the Ukrainian Refugee Experience, the people who you were housing, we made appointments in advance. So we said, are you willing to talk? We'll meet you at such and such, at your apartment building or at such and such a hotel or whatever. And so very, a few of the people in the distribution center said no, but not too many. And I used every conversation I had. Some of them were slighter than others. But everybody told me something. I mean, it was a kind of experience in human diversity, right? Like how people react to things, brings out their character. And that's what's so interesting about the book, and what was really fun about writing it is it's 45 little portraits, of human beings in all their, some impulsive, egotistical human beings and some thoughtful, careful human beings. And, everybody was their own kind of human being.
I'm gonna ask you to tell us some of the stories or some that really kind of stayed with you over these months. But before that, I'm interested in sort of some macro ideas that came from this. So, I mean, just the setup here is that we're talking about JCC Krakow, which decided early on in the war, the very beginning of the war, that we were going to do all we could to help everybody, and that meant an early decision not to differentiate between Jews and non-Jews. Now, of course, the reason that we're doing this is to help people, and we're not looking for a pat on the back. That being said, we do understand that we live in a world of anti-Semitism. Ukraine itself is historically has not been the easiest place for Jews to live for a lot of its history. Sometimes we're very good, but not always. And we're never we're not vehemently against the idea of these people leaving their time with us and having a bit of a better opinion of Jewish world. And as much as, we say this idea, the idea in which in the Orthodox, Avi would call Kiddush Hashem, really, this idea, right? It's not saying PR for the Jewish people, but that we're reflecting the wonder of God's work by helping others. And it reflects well, to some degree on the Jewish people. We're acting as his agents here on some level, although that probably sounds terrible, and we should cut that out. But in that sense, so I mean, I'm just one of the first thing that always sticks in my mind, or people ask me, is do these people, do they know that they're being helped by a Jewish institution? Do they care? I mean the non-Jews, because the Jews are like probably
I would say they did. I mean, that wasn't top of mind for many. Again, these people have just jumped out of burning buildings, and left their husbands, and there's a lot going on for these people. But quite a few of them, it did in a way that always makes me a little nervous when non-Jews say, I like the Jews. That's always, why do you?
In this part of the world, we take it because the opposite is much worse.
But no, there were people. I mean, there was like some people. One woman who told me about how her grandfather had helped Jews in the Holocaust, had hid Jews in the basement of a monastery in the Holocaust. I mean, people brought out their Jewish stories often, and did say, and people were people were grateful in general, grateful to the Jews, grateful to the Poles. I mean, one thing I started noticing was many people were very composed when they were telling their own story. And then tears would come sometime in the middle of the story. The tears often came when they're expressing their gratitude. I mean, it was very striking. Like they weren't crying when they talked about themselves and that awful jumping out of the burning building and that awful train and the shelling and whatever. They cried when they were talking about how grateful they were. I mean, not 100%, but that often happened. It was very striking. And they were very grateful. People were very eager to tell you that.
Tamar, have you kept in touch with them 6 months later? Some of them?
Well, we followed up with the 23 of the 45 who we could find, who we had phone numbers for, or whatever way to contact. I did that in August, and of that 23, 9 had gone back to Ukraine. So 40% had gone back to Ukraine.
Wow.
And then 3 had gone on to mostly the UK, and the rest were here. And I'm actually eager. I have a sort of idea maybe for a story to go into Ukraine and find the 9 and like talk to them there. I don't know if I'll actually pull that off, but I'm eager to do that. I think that would be a really interesting story, because I talked to them about why they came out. Well, why did they go back, and what did they find when they went back, and how's the experience changed them?
No question, that would be the logical follow-up to this book. The Ukrainian refugee experience.
Hey, Jonathan, where can you get that book?
Amazon.com.
Oh, interesting. And
And
what happened to the proceeds?
We're partnering with Jeff Bezos. You might have heard of him. He's going to get a little bit rich, but also a little bit richer. But the JCC in Krakow, Poland, will benefit and be able to help more of these people. Of course, all that we're doing and the number that we've helped so far, and we try to keep track of these things because people, it makes a difference in terms of the support that we get. Is 135,000 refugees that we've been able to help so far. So we're only able to do that because of the generosity of people around the world, and that book is another way for them to express that generosity and for that generosity to manifest itself.
Well, to express it and to see what they're helping. I mean, that's
See what they're helping.
See who they're helping.
Exactly. And I like, so for us, it's been a struggle, but one of the things, this is all very new for us, obviously, organizations that have been doing the humanitarian stuff obviously have protocols and they're experts in that. And we're expert in our thing, not in this. So, also as a Jewish institution helping non-Jews, how strong do we want to play that up, right? Do we want to, thank you very much for coming. Remember the Jews helped you, what's the way to do that in a tasteful way? How should we do that? And we've generally just left it alone. The building is the building. We think
I think people get it. I think people do get it.
It's not, it doesn't, if somebody said, oh, I got, if I walked down the street and I said, where'd you get that bag? And they said, oh, I don't know, there's a building over there giving stuff out. I would be perfectly fine with that, to be honest. It's such a, the satisfaction that we get being able to help people is the most important. And if it's able to create a little bit of goodwill toward the Jewish people, then God knows the Jewish people could use goodwill.
Well, I do think people got it. Like, I don't think there was anybody who said, who gave me that? Where am I? I think they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Avi.
I thought it would have been nice to give them an apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah and saying it's from the Jewish community, that they're, they should be made aware. It's something that we want to.
It's a good idea. Why'd you say it now?
I said it to Nastya then, and I think she ordered honey, and I hope that it was received. But I think small little things that you could do.
Maybe we did that. I'm not sure if we did.
I think we might have. I think you
Sebastian telling me that we did that. So good idea, Avi.
Thank you.
The system works. No, absolutely. Why not? Also, to be honest, this week people are waiting in line, and I took a photo the other day. There were 15 people sitting in the sukkah waiting to come in the building, and that to me was fascinating. You have people who are in temporary shelter waiting inside a different type of temporary shelter to get sustenance. It's
I thought that was beautiful, Jonathan. I thought that was really nice. I think the more that people can understand that while they're going through this trauma, is that there's another group of people that went through trauma. It's built into our DNA that we want to help.
So one of the people who I have, you're not supposed to have favorite children, right? But I sort of befriended certain of these people that I talked to. One of the ones that I have become really friends with, she was literally a rocket scientist. This is coming around to the Jewish question. She was literally a rocket scientist in Ukraine. She worked at a state research laboratory where she made rockets, designed rockets. And wow. She had a horrible story of getting out. I won't go into all the details, but she kind of broke down on the train where, some people were stoic all the way through, and some people had a moment when they kind of broke, and she had a moment when she broke. But the point of the story, well, there are 2 points of the story. A, she got to Poland, and what did she do for a job? She took a job stocking shelves in a supermarket. And she was perfectly okay with it. She said, I'm feeding my kids. It's what I have to do now. I'm doing what I'm doing. We'll see. But the other interesting thing about her is she decided she wanted to convert. And this had to do, I think maybe she was already starting to think about it in some way in Ukraine, but then it had to do with landing sort of in this part of Poland and starting to read about the camps. And where I encountered her, the way you helped her, you didn't actually provide any services, but she found out about your Seder and got to your Seder. And she's not Jewish. And she got to your Seder, and she kind of stood out at your Seder because she was sort of bold, like when it came time to read, all the other Ukrainians were a little hesitant to read, but she stood up to read. And she's now she's moved on to Ireland, where it's hard to convert, but it wasn't exactly direct because you helped her, but I think it has to do with the way the 2 stories are aligned, as you're describing.
What a beautiful story. I didn't know. I had no idea that was.
Tamar, now's the time to give us a little more of the tease. Like, she's in the book, so can you tell us, a little bit?
Yeah, well, her amazing story is, again, the most amazing thing about her story is this rocket scientist 2 stocking shelves. And she got here and she found this job that she had. Again, the trip was awful, and it's a typical. There are moments in these trips that are sort of it's in every, some version of it's in every trip. The trip itself was almost always incredibly chaotic. You were either like in a car where you didn't know where to drive and you were like zigzagging around the bombing, or you were in trains where you got to the train station and there were so many people on the platform you couldn't squeeze into a car, and then you had to take trains where she told a story of taking a train. Well, the story on the platform for her, which was very dramatic, was her daughter got pulled into the train and her son got pulled out down the platform. And there's like surging mob, and she has to figure out like, what the heck do I do? Thousands of people in a train thing. And does she follow the daughter into the car? Or does she follow the son down the platform?
It's a 2022 Sophie's Choice.
Well, luckily the mob then got so strong in one direction that they pushed them together again. But then she stood up for hours in a train, and it was freezing cold in the train. The trains were awful. You couldn't have any lights because of the bombing, and it's at one point the train stopped, and they were hearing shelling all the time, and at one point the train stopped in the middle of the night and they had to get out and stand in a field, and they could hear the shelling nearby. I don't know what the theory was, like maybe like the train could get bombed but not the field or something. Who even knows like what somebody was thinking, but they were standing out in this field waiting for the shelling to stop. And then she finally had this moment where again she kind of cracked, and she'd been someone really well put together. She's a beautiful woman who was a rocket scientist who had her whole life together, and she's on this train freezing cold going where she knows no one and doesn't know what the future is going to bring. And she just said that hit her all of a sudden, and she in a way that she could hardly take, but she pulled herself together, and she got to she knew somebody in a village about a couple hours from Krakow, and she went there and she got a job right away, stocking shelves in the supermarket, and she was okay with it, and then she about 2 months later she had the idea to go to Ireland. I guess her visa could work in Ireland because it's an EU country, and so she went to Ireland, and there again, she got a job stocking shelves in a supermarket. But she's, it's the resilience of people like her. Like, there's not a good ending yet. She's recently got a slightly better job working in a refugee center, but there's no happy ending yet. But what's life affirming about her story and so many others is her resilience and her strength and what she was willing to do for her kids. I'm keeping my kids alive. If it means stocking shelves in a supermarket, I'll figure out how to do it, and I'll do it, and I'll think about other things when I'm stocking the shelves. And it's an incredible, it's again resilience.
The strength, to me, the two, if you want to, natural tendency to boil things down to overarching themes. I guess for me, the takeaways for the 7 months have been the strength and resilience of Ukrainian people, really, but for the most part, Ukrainian women, because that's who we're talking about, 90% here. And the generosity of spirit of Polish society that
Absolutely.
I hadn't witnessed in the first 20 years that I'd been living here. So it's not like I'm shocked I just got off the boat. 20 years, other refugee crises, other issues with people in need, history here of at certain times not being very hospitable to the stranger, and in all different meanings of that. But that's been absolutely stunning to see those two things, the juxtaposition of the strength and resilience of Ukrainian women versus the open hearts of the Polish people.
Yeah, well, I've thought about that too, and asked a lot of people and wrote about it a little bit recently. You get the same answer from everyone. Why has Poland does this? And it's all about the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Ukraine is fighting our enemy, the Russians. We've had the same age-old enemy. And it's not like I've heard that once. I've heard that dozens of times. That's what everyone sort of comes to when you say why.
From the Ukrainians.
From the Poles.
From the Poles.
Yeah, they're very clear about what this is about. So there was some polling, I no pun intended. There were some surveys done before the war of Polish attitudes towards refugees. And large, like in most countries, large majorities say, no, we don't want any refugees. And majorities say, just a couple months before the invasion, majority wanted to build a wall on the eastern border. The Poles are no different from anybody else. They don't like strangers. But the difference in the war is that they see Ukrainians really as, in some way, there's been a lot of bad history between the two, but they see them as their brothers in the fight against Russia.
I think that, there was, I don't think there was an overwhelming feeling of love toward the Ukrainians that were in Poland before the war. We had 1.5 million Ukrainians, a massive, massive number. One of the largest peacetime movements of people in post-war Europe was pre-war Ukrainians living in Poland. And, it wasn't, I didn't see anybody, thank God the Ukrainians are here. It's like,
No, they feel like they're fighting.
That was the restaurant. They didn't understand what I was talking about. That Ukrainian waiter didn't know, like it was kind of like a sort of toleration, they tolerated them. But I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that it was women. There was.
Well, I think that's something. Yeah, I think that's something. It's women. I mean,
I'm sure it was
a lot of
something.
things.
I wonder how much.
Women, they're white, they're Christians. I mean, it's easier than, whatever, Middle Eastern men. But I think the biggest thing is that those are things that make it easier. But what's really driving it is they're doing something for us, protecting us. I mean, it's not only.
Could be us.
Could be us. I mean, that's the other feeling I had about the refugees, just to twist the topic slightly. I mean, these were ordinary people. They're no heroes in my book. They're no larger than life characters. And it's just, ordinary, bewildered human beings. And it's powerful because they're just so ordinary, and it does make you think, like, it could be me, and like, what would I have done?
They all have I think that for much of the rich Western world, seeing well-dressed, because they're very well-dressed, I feel, you get the feeling that if they have not so much money, a lot of that, what they're spending is to look presentable. There's a strong element in Ukrainian culture that they have to look, they look good.
Yeah.
With cell phones, although it's a shame that this is the situation, white, well-dressed, middle-class seeming women, that I think elicits a different level of empathy than.
Okay, but they're not all women, right? So, I mean, again, one of my most powerful stories is this HVAC technician from Busha. And so he came home into his apartment in Busha the first day. He'd been like out on a 3-day overnight, HVAC job. And he came home the first morning of the war, and he looked out his window and he could see the war. The Ostomel airfield was in sight of his apartment, and he could see the smoke on the horizon. And he had a handicapped wife, severely handicapped wife. She'd had some kind of brain surgery and come out the worst. And he just knew, I have to get her out of here. Like, she's not going to survive a war. And so he got in his car and he drove in the wrong direction, which a lot of people did. Like, he didn't really know where to go. So he went to his village house, which was closer to Belarus. So like more Russians, more fighting, more whatever. So there he is in Belarus. Literally, a tank shoots at his car, a tank shoots at him. They have to hide in the village house, boarding up the windows, and still like broken glass comes in. So then after a few days, they get in the car, and they don't know where they're going. People didn't know where to go. So they just sort of drove west, toward Poland. And, they would call people in towns that they knew and said, can you put us up? And people would put them up. But again, they're just the chaos of it. Like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going away from the bad. And they finally got to the border, and people could see him coming across wheeling a woman in a wheelchair, and volunteers surrounded him. And he very quickly, somebody from the JCC found him, and he lived at the JCC's, on the JCC's generosity for at least, I think, 4 or 5 months. And his challenge was, but what was interesting about him, he was just the kindest man in the world. And, here's this severely handicapped wife, I'm not saying most people would have left her, but I mean, he would have done anything to save her. And the challenge was he couldn't work because he didn't have anyone to take care of her. So he had to stay home and watch her all day long. So an HVAC technician, he could have worked in Poland, but he didn't have the care. And so he did eventually go back to Busha. And I'm sort of hoping that that's working out in the sense that now somebody, in his family probably is watching her, and he can go back to work. But they're not all women, and the men were as poignant for want of a better word, and as moving, and as, sort of, I mean, it's a strong word, but heroic. I mean, people did things for their loved ones. People did heroic things for their loved ones. And it's impressive. I mean, he was just, again, I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a real alternative, leave her or not go or whatever, but he was just devoted to her, whatever, I'm going to save her.
Tamar, we're talking a lot about them. I want to talk about you a little bit in terms of like when you went through a transformation or not. On Shabbat, I had one of the Ukrainian members over for a meal, and we were talking, and she was laughing, and we're having a great time, and everyone was talking. And then she said, "Oh, and when we escaped the bombs, and we went through this place." And for a second, I needed a second to remind myself that she's like a refugee of 6 months and like was almost, killed. And for me, that was like, wait a second, she's amazing that she has dealt with this so well. But from, this is how we talk with Holocaust survivors, when they're telling us their story. And here, this is happening in real time. How did you think that this?
Yeah, so the one that, I mean, many of them, they got to me, the interviews got to me, but the most recent story, which is really still fresh for me, after I did this project, I went to Ukraine and I spent a month in a city interviewing people in a city near Kyiv. And I had there too, I was really lucky, I had a wonderful, wonderful young interpreter who was a university student who was just, so smart and so promising young man. And 2 nights ago, he texted me and he's hiding in the basement in his dorm because they're bombing. And, he's a, young man, 20 years old, whatever, he used to tease me when I said, shouldn't we go to the shelter when the sirens, sounded? He said, well, shelters, what are shelters? You don't need to go to shelter. And he would sort of joke, oh, you can hear the sound of the cruise whistle. I mean, he'd gotten very ironic about it, but here he was up at 2 a.m. texting me, I'm in the shelter. Here's, and I showed a video of himself in the dark in the shelter. And then he took me up to his dorm room and he showed me like his American flags. He said, I hope there's not a direct hit. And here was someone, I'd come to know and really love in many ways, who'd helped me, was kind of like almost, I wouldn't say a protege, that makes me sound so important, but, someone I really cared for, could have died that night and was in fear. And I mean, that I haven't shaken that, that was 2 days ago. I'm still shaking with it. He filmed himself. So partly he texted me, but partly he did a video of himself in the shelter where you couldn't see him and it was dark. And you could just sort of almost see the pale face in the dark. We're here in the shelter. And I mean, it's like there are no words for it.
I have 2 very easy questions for you. What's going to happen to Ukraine? What's next? How do you see it? Not that you're an expert, but probably more than many of us. What are some possible scenarios? And I don't necessarily mean militarily. I mean for the Ukrainian people. Is there a possibility that there's a ceasefire and life goes back to some type of normal? They live next to Russia.
They don't want that. They don't want that. To a person I've met in Ukraine or Ukrainians, they don't think they can live next to Russia or with Russia taking part of Ukraine. They think they have to get them all the way out and they have to beat them. And
how much do they see it as Russia and how much do they see it as Putin?
They see it as Russia. They see it, people say, Putin's not here raping people. Putin's not here raping people, right. People say to you in Ukraine. Putin's not here shooting people. Putin's not here, torturing people.
In the West, I think we often do that. We say, oh, Hitler did this and that. We're like, no, wait a minute. Germans did this and the Russians did that. And something we have a tendency to want to see, this sort of
the evil.
Yeah.
I think, I think what's going to decide the war is how steadfast the West is. I mean, we need to keep providing them weapons, and we need, we've seen now we need to up the game. They need air defense systems. I mean,
we need to continue to push Russia to isolate Russia and starve them of money to wage war without provoking them enough to use nuclear weapons.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's still no happy, I don't see as everybody says, the exit ramp for Putin. And I'm not sure that that Putin, that, Russia, I mean, I don't really see how it's all going to end, but Ukrainians are going to fight to the last person. And and I hope the West is going to help them, do what it takes.
And what about you, Tamar? What's the plan?
The plan, I'm here. I just went to America for 10 days and I came back. I'm trying to, so the questions that really interest me, the refugees are a really important question, but ultimately the question that interests me the most is what kind of country is going to come out of this war? Like, what is Ukraine? Ukrainians are fighting because they want a nation. They want a sovereign, independent nation. But when they win, they still are going to, we hope they win. There's a ton of work to do, right? Like Ukrainians are a little bit, I say this, it's not a great analogy, but Ukrainians are like the Jews in the sense that they've had a longing for a nation for hundreds of years and haven't really had a nation. They had a nation for 30 years, 800 years ago, and they had a nation for 2 years, 500 years ago. But until the last 30 years, they didn't have a nation. So they got a nation in 1991, and they did a B- job of it, right? like Ukraine was a medium successful country, like before the war, like a lot of corruption, and the economy wasn't so great, and they didn't really have their politics, they were getting better, but it wasn't like the perfect nation. So now, let's hope they win the war. They're winning the war because they're fighting the war because they want this nation. So the question is going to be, how do they build a nation when it's over? And can they build a nation? And do the people go back? That's one big question. Can they free themselves really from the Russians sort of mentally? Can they be the new, are they going to be the new Poland? Or are they going to be the old Ukraine? Right. And that's going to be a really important story.
One would think that this would, to some degree, cement them to the West.
Well, if you would, but again, when I was there for the month, and the story I did when I was there, which hasn't been published yet, I was talking to them about what they thought about their nation, and they're much clearer on the independence part than they are on what the country is supposed to be like, right? Because it's hard to imagine a country that you don't exactly have yet. They say freedom, but then you say freedom.
Abstract terms are easier in some sense to accept. What about Zelensky? Do they talk about Zelensky?
He's more of a hero outside than inside.
More of a hero for us than he is for, right?
They appreciate him. He's risen to the occasion, but a lot of them were skeptical at the beginning, and it's not, the way he kind of, again, the way, as you say, it's sort of the West takes the leaders. Ukrainians by nature are kind of skeptical of leaders, and and he was, they're warming to him. Let's put it that way. They appreciate the way he stayed and the way he's rallied the country.
Yeah, it's always, you have the history, I think very often, especially leaders in this part of the world, you have someone, Gorbachev, who was essentially a hero in the West and forgotten at home. Yeah. Wałęsa is far more popular in the US than he is in Poland.
Yeah, I think people appreciate Zelensky now, but he wasn't like in the beginning. America was wowed by him from the first minute, and Ukrainians took a while to appreciate him.
Yeah. Tamar, Jacoby, always a pleasure. I'm happy that you're down the block. The book is Displaced: The Ukrainian Refugee Experience. We couldn't be happy to partner with you and to be involved with this, and to help be a vehicle for you to be able to do this good work. And we hope to do lots of, I'm sure there's a lot of good projects that we have to continue to do together.
No, well, the gratitude all goes the other way. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm going to read, because it's also very convenient, because it's on the back of the book as I hold it up. Book, again, available on Amazon, or you can contact the JCC. I'm sure we'll figure out how to get you a copy. And the quote is from a refugee from Bucha named Valery, who says, "I don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow or even this evening. There's nothing to do but keep going." So let's keep going and supporting Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Tamar.
Thank you.
Tamar. Be well.
Bye. Bye.
Get some sleep. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Moadim l'simcha.